Hello everyone, Republic Jim here. I'm back in the pop-up tent, which is still standing like a month after I set it up, and in spite of heavy rain and wind and snow and everything else, it's still bone dry in here, holding up nicely. And I was just testing out this new sleeping pad that I got, which is surprisingly firm for just an inflatable. And I'm curious to see how it performs as far as like R value, but that will be for a different video. What I wanted to discuss right now is Redneck tent heater system that I'm trying out. And this right here, I have my little solid fuel stove, which I've burned sticks and stuff in before. But obviously I'm not going to do that inside a tent because that would be just suicidal. Fill the tent up with smoke, and this thing's not set up for having a stovepipe or anything. And of course this stove is nowhere near airtight at all anyway. But I wanted to try out a couple of cans of Sterno fuel in it. And what I got the idea from on this was the stove that's commercially available called the Vesta, which I think the company that makes it is Surefire or something like that. And you know, you can find it on Amazon or other places. And it's a slightly larger unit that holds 3 cans of fuel. And then it has like a shroud that goes up on top here that directs the heat towards the front, and has a heat activated fan at the back of it to help blow the air and get that convection heat circulating. I don't yet have a heat activated fan, but I probably will try getting one of those pretty soon. You know, they're only like around $20 to $30. But you know, I like the idea for possibly a tent heater, because this type of fuel doesn't put out carbon monoxide and smoke quite like other fuel sources do. It's supposed to be safe for indoors as long as you have some ventilation. And you know, I've got just a little bit of the door unzipped at the bottom, got the mesh here. I have one vent open on the roof, so I wanted to try it out and see what it does. And what I have, rather than a $100 plus unit, is just one of these stovetop heater units, and then this old cut down mailbox that sits on top to catch the heat and direct it. And I'm going to light these two up and slide them in there in the bottom part, the stove itself, and then see how this thing does for radiating heat. Currently, just with my body heat in here and the warmer days, it's hanging about 50 degrees, but wanted to see if it puts out any noticeable warmth in here anyway. And to play it safe, I have a meter here that can tell me what the carbon monoxide level is and oxygen percentage. So I'm going to put down the camera and light up my fuel and get this thing going, and you know, give it a little bit and see if it starts doing anything worthwhile. So hopefully you can see the flame in there. It is lit. One of the cans of fuel I have is pretty depleted, so it's not burning very well. The other one's putting out a decent flame. going towards the back. And of course I don't expect this stovetop heater in there to get red hot and do radiant heat or anything, but hopefully it'll catch some heat and then just transfer it through convection with all that surface area. But I'm going to turn off the light for just a moment so you can see it a little better in there. It'll probably take a little while to generate any kind of warmth, but so far the O2 level of course is fine, and holding this relatively close, we're 1 part per million there for carbon monoxide, which of course is still extremely low. I'm going to set that down here on the sleeping pad and just keep an eye on it and see if it goes up. But for the moment, just going to let this work its magic for a little while and see if it starts producing any amount of warmth. Of course, if I were to be spending the night in a tent, I would want to have some cans that were good for several hours, and I would expect it would just gradually warm and make things more comfortable. It wouldn't make a huge difference, I'm sure, but might be enough to be the difference between being a little chilly and being comfortable. So we'll see how this works, and if I'm relatively pleased with the potential, then eventually I'll get one of the heat activated fans and try putting that in the back and see if the air movement there helps with increasing the heat output. But I will check back in a little while after this has been going. Okay, so this thing's been burning, I don't know, around 15 or 20 minutes. I didn't pay too much attention. As you can see, no problem at all with the air quality in here. If I get it really close, I can get the carbon monoxide level to go up a little bit, but it's pretty minimal. I would have no problem sleeping right next to that thing. And you know, of course, this meter has an alarm that goes off if it gets too high anyway. But I've been around much higher concentrations of carbon monoxide than that, and not the least bit of difficulty. As far as temperature, it is going up. It's getting up there in the upper 50s, and you know, that's a little ways away from the stove there, not a huge distance. I mean, it is cooler over on the other side of the tent, but right here it's noticeably warm. So yeah, I would just assume that that would need to be relatively close, but this part here is still perfectly cool to the touch, and then getting over here is warm. It's not what I would call hot, so not a big danger of setting fire to anything. I have it sitting on the welding mat there anyway, but I'm feeling fairly confident about this. I'll definitely do some more testing. The way the weather is now, it's pretty unlikely I would be doing any hot tenting for many months now anyway, but that'll give me a little more chance to work on this and try to perfect it. But one thing that's kind of cool about it is that stove breaks down into individual pieces and that all lay flat, and I can fit them inside the mailbox along with the fuel canisters and everything else, and pack it all in there. And as long as it doesn't fall through the hole in the bottom of that mailbox, it's all self-contained. So I just have to put things in there in the right order to make that work. Probably will end up just bolting or riveting a small handle to the top of it so that it makes it easier to haul the whole thing around when it's loaded up. But yeah, I'll get some decent fuel canisters that last a little bit longer. They make chafing fuel ones that are good for like 6 hours a piece, and so a couple of those in there would keep a tent pretty comfortable for the night, at least as far as I can tell. I'll have to do some more testing with it, of course, but it's just continuing to slowly climb. I'm not quite at the point where I'm willing to leave this unattended, so I'm not going to go back into the house and leave it burning for another hour or two just to see how much more it warms up. Instead, I'm going to take stuff out of here and put it out and close things up for the night. But I'm pretty pleased with my first attempt, and I think it's definitely feasible. And honestly, I'm not even sure if that front fuel canister is burning at the moment. I think it might have gone out because it was really low. So if I had two of them going full steam in there, it would probably put out more warmth than what it's doing right now. But yeah, I think it's certainly feasible and not producing toxic fumes or anything. So I'm looking forward to doing more with that in the future. But that's it for now. This has been Republic Jim. I'll talk to you later.